30 seconds. 20 seconds. 10 seconds.
'Hi.
My name's J.C. McCauley.
I'm Nyesha McCauley, and you're watching AccessTV.org.
All right, my friends, once again, it is indeed time to get our talk on. It's Morning Talk with me, your host, J. Stan McCauley, along with the champions of talk this morning. We got a couple of guests joining us, but we also have none other than the one and only Cleo Duke-Wright. Good morning, Miss Cleo. How you doing?
Good morning. I'm doing pretty good, Stan.
How's your weekend?
My weekend was pretty good.
Stay busy?
Of course. Is there any other way to be? Of course.
Did it snow this weekend?
It snowed.
It did snow, didn't it? It
yes.
snowed, and then it rained. It's gone.
And then the rain is gone. I was in church. I thought, oh my gosh, please. I want to go home. I'm scared of that when it really starts up snowing a lot. And the forecast said it was just going to be flurries and then mixed rain. So I didn't think too much about it. And then when I saw those big snowflakes and all that snow coming down, I got a little worried. I have the wheelchair. I have my husband in a wheelchair. I'm saying, oh my God, how am I going to get through this? But we did fine. It was just slush. And we drove fine, and roads were all right. So
big heavy snowflakes.
Yes.
Looked like they were dropping, like someone was dropping snowballs.
So then I'm thinking, maybe we're going to get a late start when I have to go to work the next day. But no, had to be on time. Roads were fine. So I hope we don't get too much of these storms. It seems like there's a storm somewhere every day. There's a storm. So I'm hoping.
Well, you know, if we don't get some snow, it'll be we got a wrong graphic up here. If we don't get some snow, then the summertime's gonna be, we have like drought, no water coming down from the mountains and stuff like that.
I want the snow, but
you okay?
Spoil, yes. Let me just take a sip of water.
Yeah, get the old water. I have my water. Steel container that you can. Now, of course, I'm getting ready to demonstrate. It's full of water. You could turn it upside down, and it won't come out. Of course, you tempt fate, and then all the electronic equipment gets
so you won't try
flooded.
it.
So I won't try it. Right. There's levels of arrogance that one could avoid. You got your natural arrogance. Don't push it over the top.
See what I could do. See, this doesn't all over the place.
The top. Who opened the top? Right there. Well, hey. I don't know. I don't mind the snow. We don't have to shovel it, so I don't worry about that too much. And
my first year, I don't have to shovel.
No shoveling.
No shoveling. No cleaning off the car.
I gotta clean off the car though.
Oh, it's wonderful. Just get in your car and go. So that's a new one for us. And it is a pleasure. It is a pleasure. It is a pleasure.
Well, I live in a house filled with women. My wife and 2 daughters. And I am a big supporter of women's independence, but it's just unmanly to have your wife up at 6 o'clock in the morning shoveling off the car while you lay in the bed. There's just something wrong about that.
Yes. Well, my husband always cleaned off the car while I was in bed.
Mm-hmm.
He got up early in the morning before, it was still dark out there, and he'd be shoveling and cleaning off the car and making sure there was no bottles or anything under the car. And yes, now he can't do that, and I don't want to do that. I tried it one winter. I don't want to do that, so now we don't either of us have to do that.
Yeah, so. All right. Well, I know the young people like it. Back in my day, we walked to school. Of course, my parents walked backwards to school. 5 miles in the snow. But I walked to school in the snow. In fact, not only did I walk to school, I walked to school in kindergarten. And came home for lunch.
And walked back to school. With galoshes on, the boots you put over your shoes. And who would think anything of it? We thought nothing of it.
Nothing of it.
Nothing of it. Nope.
Now they close school because it might snow. Out of an abundance of caution, schools will be closed today. I think
they
the
have
teachers will enjoy that more than
a lot more cars on the road today than it was, and because Dad's the only one that had the car, and we went somewhere. We went with Dad, and otherwise we caught the bus. And most families around us were like that. So there's a lot more, and people didn't drive as much because they had to put on those big heavy chains. Those
that's right. They
chains,
didn't really have snow tires. They put the snow chains on.
Put the snow that made all that noise.
Yeah.
I don't know when they got rid of that, but I never had to put on
tearing up the roads.
Yeah.
Oh well, so much for all of that. Cell phones. The cell phone that everyone has a cell phone. Now they have cell watches. It seems everything is cellular. Everything emits radiation and stuff like that. Today we have some guests who are going to tell us a little bit about the dangers of this stuff, particularly around schools. And if you've got something like, say you look out your window, there's a cell tower, it's one of those little cell things beaming signals. You have a good strong signal in the house, but I guess the signal's doing more than just powering up your phone. So
I always think of that. I always think there's something going on with the phone. I always think there's something that could harm us, just like we used to think. I don't know. Remember when microwaves first came out? Yeah. We don't stand too close. Don't stand. And I still do that.
Step away from the microwave when it's on.
Don't put your face in that microwave. No, come back.
Checking to see the popcorn pop it in.
Yes. So I am not at all surprised that there's radiation coming from about all of these new gadgets that we have now that listen to every word. Someone was saying to me the other day that they were listening to every word. And did you tell me if you like something and you're not really, you're looking at something and you really like something, you're talking about it, you pick up your phone and there's some advertisement about what you were talking about.
I don't know if I told you that, but that is, yes. I mean, you're looking for something. Next thing you know, it's the first thing that pops up on your phone. It's always listening to you.
So I decided maybe I should turn off my phone at night. But then there's the television. And
I used to tell people, if you have cable, they can see you. There's an interactive passive thing. So just like you can see the TV is looking at your house. So it's not true, but sounds good. So, we have some special guests joining us to separate truth from fiction, and they're going to talk to us a little bit about this radiation that comes from your phone. So, good morning, good people. How is everyone doing joining us this morning?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. We're doing great.
That sounds like Dave McDonald.
Yep.
How are you doing? Let's just start off. I'll start off in the order that you appear on my screen. So Dave, how are you doing?
I'm doing wonderful, Stan. Nice to see you. Thanks for inviting us to your show. This is really going to be great.
It's good to see you. Thanks for joining us. We'll see if we can find out.
I want to say hi to Cleo. Hi, Cleo. It's been a long
I
time
didn't
since we've
even
seen each other.
notice it was you. When he said McDonald, I said, Dave McDonald. Yeah, oh, how are you doing?
I'm doing great.
Oh, good.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
We also have Gladys joining us. Good morning, Gladys.
Good morning, Stan. Thank you for inviting us to talk about this important issue.
Very, very good. And Rachel.
Hi, good morning.
Good,
Thank you.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing well, thanks. Excited for this conversation.
Very good. And my friend Mary Lou Sanders. Mary Lou, how are you?
Good morning. Good to see you again. How long has it been since I've been on the show? Like 10 years?
That's been. I don't think it's been that long. It's been a while, though. I will say that.
But we do travel in the same circles, so I see you frequently out and about.
Yes, it's good to see you. All right, so who's going to lead off with this information? So tell me about this wireless radiation and the dangers thereof, and why it's important to understand this. And we'll let whoever wants to start off.
I can start off if you.
Okay.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah, so the why it's important is because it's arguably a tremendous health risk for all of us, particularly for children, and anyone with a smaller skull, essentially, or body. And when I say tremendous health risk, I mean that there's a lot of compelling evidence that it affects almost every major system in our body. And it being the signal that, Cleo was talking about, you're both talking about, whether it's coming from your individual devices or even more troublingly from the cell towers, or they call them small cells. If you see those kind of white rectangular boxes popping up everywhere throughout Hartford and elsewhere, often on top of a building or a smokestack or something, that's sort of making a collection of antennas that would be called a tower elsewhere. And that is also emitting a lot of those signals. And when we take them out of the cable and we instead send them wirelessly through the air, they can essentially bump into your body, right? And they're giving your body signals that communicate what researchers are finding is essentially like a stress signal. So it's associated pretty conclusively with an increased rate of heart tumors, brain tumors, DNA damage, reproductive harm, including infertility and miscarriages, endocrine disruption. Others can jump in. The list is pretty seemingly infinite, which makes sense from what we know about stress and oxidative damage. It affects all of us. So right now, what we're focused on particularly is the levels of radiation around schools, because again, our children are most vulnerable for a lot of reasons, their size and also their developmental stage. There's a lot of compelling evidence actually out of Yale, done in New Haven, that was showing that when women are pregnant, if they're exposed to higher levels of radiation, their children are more likely to have attention issues. We all hear about ADHD, hyperactivity, all those kinds of things. And they're showing that there's a compelling argument there. There's a lot to be said.
Just to jump in for a moment, Rachel,
Yeah.
there's been a huge increase in behavioral issues in our schools.
Mm.
And I got to believe it's related to some of this stress that the children are under from radiation and other sources as well. There's a lot of stresses in people's lives sometimes. And I think it's a really unacknowledged problem we have in our society right now.
As you mentioned, there is a lot of activity and things as it pertains to young people in school. Fights, people's short fuses, things that are going on, and it's unprecedented. It's just like out of the blue, because it was never like that.
Not before.
Now
no.
things are so tense that people are just like snapping, if you will, kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're attributing that perhaps to the fact that schools are there's cell towers near schools. Some schools even some schools host towers. I'm not sure about the schools at Harvard, but I know that there are a lot of schools that have these towers in on the buildings.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. A lot of particularly underfunded schools will turn to that as a source of revenue. So you rent out your roof to, telecommunications company. They're able to put what they call just an antenna, just a small cell, right? Or in some cases, even, just explicitly larger structures on top of the roof. And they pay the school a fee. And a lot of times the school doesn't recognize that there's a health risk. That I think it's really important the way you kind of framed that question originally, Stan, in terms of truth from fiction, because that's really what's been, to use Mary's language, muddled in this, right? That schools are going into these decisions, parents are going into these decisions without having at least what I personally would consider truthful, factual information, because it's been hugely distorted. The science has been hugely distorted. The messaging has been hugely distorted by telecom's influence. So we can get into all of that, but I just want to say that because it's not to vilify the schools that are making these decisions necessarily. And frankly, they can get just as much radiation when a business across the street or just a telephone pole across the street has an antenna up. And we've gone around and done a lot of measurements comparing the levels of radiation at schools and across the whole region. And you see a direct correlation between the location, the proximity of the towers and antennas, and the level of radiation. So to answer your question more briefly, in the United States, we are putting essentially cell towers on roofs, and in other countries, they're not only prohibiting cell towers from within certain distance of schools, but prohibiting Wi-Fi altogether from inside. So we've got a long way to go.
Wow. Yeah. Considering how much everyone is now so dependent on their handheld devices, everywhere you go, everyone's interconnected. So what other information can you share to help people understand this? And as she mentions, it's not necessarily trying to vilify, but to make you aware, like radon in your house.
Right.
Exactly.
What started the investigation? How did it begin? That there was concern about this.
Thankfully, we have Gladys here. So Gladys, are you comfortable speaking about that? Because I think you can tell us from the beginning.
Yes. I have been a resident of the Southwest of Hartford for 25 years, and 3 years ago, this coalition was formed in support to my objection to the installation of a 5G antenna very near my house, 5 feet from my property line and 48 feet from my house, especially my bedroom. And in the process, I became aware of, I was concerned how the whole process of notifying me, the way the city handles this installation in Hartford, in the neighborhoods, and how even at the state level, all this issue is managed. When I received a notification from Verizon about the installation of the antenna very near my house, at the time I had some awareness of the negative effect of radiation on people, on life, biology. but I was very naive about how the whole installation process takes place. So I objected, and at the same time, I received various paperwork telling me about the installation of the antenna. I received also notification from Public Utilities Regulatory Authority, PURA, kind of backing up Verizon. They indicated you will be able to object, and then you will have the opportunity to present your concerns. Well, let me tell you, kind of the paperwork said, um, risk factor or value, property value, they don't count. And at the time, immediately I noticed something was not right in the way Verizon sent the paperwork and the Ampura. So I became very, very nervous, and I contacted the city of Hartford, all my elected officials. I was able to call all the offices in the city of Hartford, community engagement, zone and planning. No one was able to provide information about telecoms, installation of antenna. They all were saying, well, we don't have anything to do with that. That is the state, and that is the telecoms. And that was concerning to me, because not me or my neighbors knew about the massive installation of antenna in our neighborhood. And Verizon sent pictures of the property. God bless you. Picture of the properties that have been that were going to be affected, and there were three houses: my house, the house behind, the house across, the whole block. But we have about 10 houses in the block, and I understood that all houses were going to be affected, but only three were identified. And from the three identified as being affected, because we were very close, I was the only person living in the property, because the other two houses are rented. So I checked with my neighbors, and none of them were notified, because they were tenants. They were notified about this installation. And of course, the homeowners were not living in Hartford. They even didn't respond to the notification. So I was very concerned about all this, the lack of information, the city no involvement in what was going on in the community. And I began contacting environmental groups for support and advocacy. I didn't have a clue about, and I felt very lonely in the process. I thought, oh my God, I am confronting this global corporation that is Verizon, me, myself, and I felt very, very disempowered. And I started calling different environmental groups, and none of them was interested in dealing with radiation and 5G, because no, we are not working with that issue. No, that is not my issue. So by doing presentations in community groups in Hartford, I did presentation at the neighborhood rehabilitation zone. Is that the name, David?
Yeah, revitalization zone, the NRZ. Yeah.
The NRC. I got the attention of some people in my area, and some people were interested in meeting with me and learning more about this issue. And I was blessed by the support of a lawyer, Cynthia Jennings, who volunteered to represent me with this issue. And through her, I was able to get the support from an environmental community organizing agency in Maine, but they they work in some states on the East Coast. So I was provided with a community organizer for all the technical work. And through that, I had the support of the community, a lot of neighbors and activists, leaders who joined my efforts to address my concern with the hearing. the Public Utility Regulatory Authority, PURA, provide the opportunity for people to express concerns through a hearing. But what was even more concerning to me is that PURA had indicated they had a community advocate. Yeah, community advocate who I was able to contact if I had any concerns. So I contacted, especially the person had a Spanish name. I said, oh my God, I have an ally here. So I contacted the PURA community outreach person, and I explained my concern about the health, about me being alone dealing with variation, about the city, and he was listening to me. But at the time, when I was closer to the hearing, I learned that that person was a lawyer who was going to cross-examine me during the hearing. So,
Wow.
you see,
Wow.
that was another
Complete
red
setup.
flag of the whole process. So I was so blessed. Well, we postponed the hearing 3 times because we were organizing. By the time of the hearing, this group had already met with the council. We met like 3 times. We met with the environmental committee of the city council. We met. We we had different meetings with the city council and the city council lawyer at the time, whose family had a house. He grew up in my neighborhood. He was in support, at least at the time. So by the time of the hearing, I had 22 people supporting my concern. I had 2 lawyers because Cynthia brought someone else. And also I had an engineer with 29 years of experience in the Department of Defense. And all of them had been researching my application because, all these documents are public. So they had very valid concerns about misinformation Verizon provided to PURA, a lot of mistake in the application. For example, they have submitted all the paperwork of a 4G for a 5G application. So they were so sure that the whole process was going to go through without a problem that they didn't make sure that they use the paperwork they have been using for the previous antenna. So this engineer was able to provide evidence of how the information Verizon provided about the amount of radiation my community, my block will be exposed was triple. She explained that beautifully. The Cynthia, as a lawyer, was able to identify and prove a lot of wrongdoing in the process, and still the commission, the PURA, was in favor of Verizon. And in the process, I noticed that a lot Verizon and PURA refer to each other as partners. We are partners. So that was another red flag. They are not going to be against each other. I also found out in this hearing that no one never ever no one was successful in their objection. So everyone who objected lost. So even though I organized very well, I had strong representation legally from an engineer with knowledge, more knowledge than the commissioners who were facilitating. If you go to PURA, those commissioners, the background is in corporation. They don't have any knowledge about health, about anything. They are corporate people. So we had 3 hearings and I lost the case. The antenna was installed very near my house. In fact, my health has deteriorated tremendously in the last few years, and I suspect that in some way it has to do with that. But as a blessed an outcome of this, I had the support of my neighbors and these members of the coalition, and the coalition has evolved to what it is now. I think the coalition is addressing bigger issues, and I believe our work has been very significant. At least the city of Hartford is aware. We have been addressing that the issue in many different ways, and I am very grateful of the members of the coalition who are here, who have been very committed to this issue. Thank you.
Wow, that's shocking. I'm not surprised.
I'm not
But
surprised
that's
either.
that's
I'm not
shocking.
surprised at all.
They're interviewing you as an outreach coordinator who ultimately is, they're getting information to use
Against you. Yeah.
against you. That's horrible.
That's the thing. Pura pretends they run like a court type system. It's not. They don't run there's not a case being done at the Pura hearing. It's not really a legal proceeding, but they pretend it is.
Mm-hmm.
Then they ignore the law, basically.
Well, and the law itself is also not set up so as this technology is evolving, there's no centralized place on the federal level, on the state level, on the municipal level, where there's a place that is in charge of regulating these technologies. That's Pura wasn't designed to do that. And so when you speak with them, they're like, well, that's not what we do. And then you call the state and they say, well, that's not what we do. It's up to the municipalities. And then municipalities, you call them and they're like, well, often when you call, they don't necessarily even know about installations happening. Or as wasn't the case in Hartford last year, AT&T and others had gone to the city and neglected to mention that the FCC is being sued in federal court, but had used the FCC law to say, hey, we're entitled to install these small cells wherever we want on public right of ways. And if you don't, we're going to sue you. And so then when we as a coalition approach the council, in their mind, first of all, I think, money drives this stuff, right? And the city of Hartford does not have the luxury of just taking on a tremendous lawsuit. So I think that was setting the kind of ground for that conversation. And then they also had in their ear everyone, saying, well, this is just a load of, craziness and it's conspiratorial. And there's, if you don't really take the time to read through the science, it's very easy to say like, oh, it looks like there's a ton of evidence that says that it's not harmful. If you don't really know what you're reading and how to parse through it and how to look at who's funding it and all those kinds of things. So because of all those reasons, it was almost like our second chance. It was a larger level of what Gladys was going through, where we submitted all these reports. We had, hundreds of signatures trying to ask council people, can you at least pause, giving AT&T the green light? And while individual council members had expressed at least verbal support individually, when they were all together, they didn't even register any of our requests, complaints, or anything. It was that resolution that sort of greenlit 5G in Hartford was compiled with other resolutions, and it was just passed without any kind of dissent.
On the consent agenda, yeah, without even debate, without even debate, no debate, just pass.
Thank you, David. Yeah.
May I add something? I would say my disappointment with the city has been the lack of interest and the lack of I don't know if I call it.
I would call it concern, lack of concern.
But no power to address this issue. There are many other communities in the nation who have confronted this issue and who those places, those towns and cities have been able to pass policies and expectation to the telecoms to stop the installation of antenna in some. And maybe David, you can add about what other communities have been doing, or establish no less than 50 feet from residentials. There have been towns that have used their power as elected officials to confront telecoms and protect the community. And Hartford has not been able to do that. Maybe, David, you can talk about what other communities have been doing that we have not considered to do in Hartford.
Well, I don't really have a list in front of me about what communities have done what, but no, I know that in Stanford they tried to force this resolution through Stanford. Stanford stopped it. They did not approve it. They killed it. So the telecoms didn't get their way in Stanford. They got their way here. They get their way in the other core cities as well, probably.
But in New York,
who's going to stop them?
That community, Flower, and in New York, remember that they were able.
Oh yeah.
In Colpack, New York, and Shelburne, Massachusetts. Shelburne, Massachusetts doesn't allow cell towers within 3,000 feet of a school.
Wow.
There's countless, Pittsfield also has one. Easton, Connecticut is the one David was referring to. There's a bunch in California. There's a number throughout the country. I'm conflating right now, moratoriums on 5G small cell deployment and also setbacks that mean you can't put this infrastructure 50 feet from someone's house, like in Gladys' case, or a school. But yeah, there's a number of municipalities. We have that all listed on our website for anyone who's interested in that.
Well, let me put the website up. Our time is running short. So, at the end of the day, what can viewers do, and what can residents do to help get this message out, or to speak out about it, or something along that line? And Mary.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to say there is some information being put together, and there's some probably on the website already. When Gladys informed me about this issue, that was a couple of years ago, and I read through all the reports that had been collected in order to prepare my PURA testimony. I was shocked. I mean, I'm a cancer survivor. I had cancer in 2019, and that year I got rid of my microwave, believe it or not. Now, my kids think I'm out there, conspiracy theory and not trusting companies to do right by us, but I wasn't taking any chances. As a cancer survivor, I was not taking any chances. When I saw these towers going up all around my neighborhoods, and around the same time I was contacted by Gladys, I was happy to get involved in it. And when I found out that the city and the state and all these people were just bowing to the FCC guidelines, and then reading that those guidelines had not been updated since 1996. I mean, we already know that federal agencies are not held accountable. The accountability is a big issue across all levels of government. But something as important as that, not to have been updated since 1996. So I became re-involved. I had not been involved for some time dealing with my own issues. But when I came back a few months ago and saw the effort to reach out to the schools and notify parents and parent leaders, I was able to work with one of the other coalition members, Martha Kelly, and we actually spoke to a bunch of school personnel, and we exchanged emails with parent leaders, including Gwen Samuels, who we're trying to provide more information to, and hopefully get in front of some parent groups to talk about how they can at least prevent their children from oversaturation to the extent of their ability. Obviously, the children have to be in the school buildings a certain amount of time, but if they can limit some of the other things they're being exposed to on their handheld devices. When I started working with Gladys on this, I started leaving my phone in the kitchen when I go to bed at night. Previously I always had the phone on the nightstand right near me. I could grab it in the middle of the night, or I could lay there and play games or check Facebook or whatever. But I don't do that anymore. I never hold the phone up to my ear. There's always something you can do to minimize some of the risks. So we want to be able to provide some more of that information to the communities and particularly to the schools. And I'm really hopeful that some of these school officials get back to us, especially people like the union rep for the teachers. I mean, this is something that they should be concerned about. So hopefully we'll continue this work. I congratulate Gladys for, starting all this years ago and not just giving up and bringing in people to continue the work. And hopefully we can have some impact on this, whether or not we win the ultimate battle with the telecoms. Thank you.
All right.
Add one. Sorry, Stan.
Go on.
I don't want to miss this opportunity to just draw attention to the data that we have collected, particularly because you can see the inequity in the distribution of wireless radiation. So you can see Harvard has a number of schools where the level of radiation is so high that it would be illegal in Italy or Bulgaria or some of these other countries that frankly protect their citizens much better than they do here in terms of radiation. So I see you have it on the screen scan. Do you mind just scrolling down a bit so I can see the Harvard schools and the viewers can see possibly? So anything that is above green is above what would be considered the precautionary limit. I want to be clear that every single school on this list is safe according to the FCC limit, which means specifically that with 30 minutes only of a radiation level, we're not cooking our kids. We're not causing thermal damage. That's all that means. So, I mean, there's that, right? Like, I'm glad we're not cooking them. However, most of the most troubling, effects are long-term, far longer than 30 minutes at far lower, what's called the power density or the strength of the radiation. And so while the FCC will, allow 10 million microwatts per square meter, the precautionary guidelines by various medical organizations and international organizations is to stay below at least 10 microwatts per meter square, which would be green. So if you can see, I don't know if there's a way to perhaps just make it a bit smaller so you can see, we did 16 different municipalities, and there's not a single school in Hartford or Manchester or Windsor or New Britain that we found that was considered safe according to these more precautionary limits. In fact, the only ones that are considered safe by those precautionary limits were in Bolton, Connecticut. So you can see that real pattern emerging that correlates with, urban, suburban, urban, rural kind of patterns. And I mean, I don't need to reiterate the saga of environmental justice issues in this country to say that we don't need another, toxic exposure that's disproportionately kind of dumped on urban residents. So, if people go on the website, they can check their school that their loved ones are at, put in a request if you want us to measure radiation at another school. And there's so much more to this story to say, but hopefully at least getting people to, I think even my own response when I first learned about this is like, oh, well, that's just like the conspiracy stuff, like that's not real. That's not whatever. My body made me pay attention. And then I, was able to learn how essentially telecoms funds, science, making it seem like conspiratorial, and it's truly not. But there's someone else can jump in. I don't want to keep from monopolizing this.
Well, our clock is run out. But very, very good information and needful. Folks can get in touch with you at the, on your website.
Yes.
GHC, the number 4, GHC4, safetech.com.
You got it.
So
or if you just Google Greater Hartford Coalition for Safe Technology, it should come up as well.
Greater Hartford Coalition for Safe Technology. So our guests have been Miss Rachel here, Dave McDonald, Mary Lou Sanders, and Gladys, who's gone. Gladys had to check out. Either she checked out or she dropped off. You know, the
She had to get to work, I think.
Okay,
She had to
all right.
He
leave,
was sneaking it in at work.
All
Yeah.
right, there we go. There we go. Go in the old work Zoom emergency work Zoom closet.
We all know that one well, huh?
Yeah. Guys, thanks for joining us and sharing the information this morning. And, don't hesitate to share the program and, help get that.
Yeah,
word out.
do you have time for one last quick thing?
30 seconds.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that if you have a child in the school where there's high radiation, we'd be glad to come and talk to your PTO or other parent groups about the risk and about the research, so you can be better informed about whether there's a serious risk to your child or not.
Yeah.
All
We're
right.
here to inform people. So if you want us to come speak to your PTO, we'd love to.
Or board or anyone.
Or board or whoever, yeah.
All right. So thanks a lot, guys, and we will talk to you again soon. Keep us in the loop so we can keep Hartford in the loop.
Yep.
All right.
Thank you. We
Very good.
appreciate it.
Thanks, Dan.
All right. Thank you very much. So Miss Cleo, wow.
Oh my goodness. This is
Give you something to think about.
something to think about. I mean, there's so there's so much that we have to think about. So much that the community is not safe. The community is not safe.
Yeah, and it,
Radiation, so many things, the food, just so many things that we are at risk. And when she said she was on the trial or the hearing that they had, that was that seemed to me, they did all of this work, they got all of this evidence, they had more evidence than the people who were making the decision, and they lost.
it was like the deck was stacked before they even went in.
Right.
And
That's how I felt. That's how I felt with the election. It doesn't matter.
yeah.
It doesn't matter. It's still, you're still going to lose.
Right.
And this is just another example of abusing the population, abusing the community for your own monetary gain.
Well, it seems as though the bureaucracy has stacked the deck in their favor. As Dave talked about, you go to the hearing, but the hearing is designed to hear, to help maybe set policy. But it seems like they've turned the hearing into a courtroom, and then they make a decision. But they're not a court. They're not a court of law. And so they have an agenda. And so they may be, I think, like they hear from you so that they can now frame the argument for why you need to listen to them, and they kind of like appease you.
On and on and on. As community goes down and down, and the whole community needs to stand up.
All right. Well, we're out of time, Miss Cleo. Unfortunately.
Oh, that's too bad.
All right, my friends, share with friends, family, and foe. That way you keep them in the know. There's a lot of information out there. If you have information you'd like to share with our audience, please get in touch with us. Let us know, and we'll keep them in the loop. All right. You all have a fabulous rest of your day and a great week, Miss Cleo. I'll see you next week.
Okay. See you all. Have a great week.